What's up, SE Nation? So last week my guest was Pravin Dandra, and so he's a new SE. He just became an SE. And the whole conversation was about the struggles and tribulations of going through the process of becoming an SE when it came to interviews, rejections, applications, all that. So based on that, I wanted to give a little bit of insight on what we can do to prepare, or at least what I have done in the past to prepare for interviews. Yep, I got it. Fixed it. So in episode 67, we the salesengineers.com/show 67, 67 or 65? Hold on, give me 1 second to confirm. 65. So in show, we the salesengineers.com/show 65, I talked about the interview process. And this is not what I'm talking about today, although it will touch upon it a little bit. But assuming we already applied for a job, we got the first screening call. And the whole point of this episode is to talk about what we need to do to prepare for the screening call and the following interviews with hiring managers, VPs, and whatnot. The first thing I like to do when I get when we set the date that we're going to have a screening call, I would like to know if it's the recruiter or the hiring manager. Generally speaking, it is a recruiter, so let's just assume it is a recruiter right now. So I'll figure out who I'm talking to, get their name, and I check them out on LinkedIn. This may not give you any information whatsoever, or it can give you a little bit of insight about what they enjoy doing so that you can have a chat with them during the interview. And I like to keep it informal. Like, I'm very polite, but I like to make jokes. I like to get them talking as well, more than I enjoy talking. And what I do when I do my screening calls is I always have my resume and job description in front of me, whether I print them out or have them in front of me on the computer that I can see them and compare. Because you might have applied to, let's say, to keep it simple, 10 jobs. I change my resume for every job that I apply to. A little bit, not a lot, but generally speaking, there's a cover letter and the resume. The cover letter changes based on the requirements that they need. The resume changes based on the requirements they need. So I like to make sure I have it in front of me, and I also like to have the job description in front of me, because what I've seen for these interviews is that the recruiter uses it as a checklist. Like, did you do this? Did you do that? So I have it in front of me just so I can actually know how to answer questions. I like to have a salary range ready in my head. I don't necessarily have to share it during this meeting, but I like to know if he asks me or she asks me, what is the rate you're looking for? I like to have an answer in my head. I always review my resume and prepare stories on like whatever achievements that I've done. So, for example, on my resume, I have that I've achieved 87% of quota without even a sales guy, and I talk about how I had to pick up the slack. And I had 6 month period where I didn't have a sales guy. I had to do the sales part, the pre-sales part, and the SE part. So I share that information, like turn something negative into a positive. Or let's say one of the skills that they're looking for is leadership, that I talk about how I led team without being a manager. I got them to do whatever I thought was best, and we all stood behind each other. We worked together as a team, and we succeeded. Just prepare stories in your head about some of the things that you've done in the past. There's always common questions that they ask for interviews, especially the recruiter. Like, why are you leaving your job and why are you looking for a new one? That seems to be a common one. And it's kind of weird because if you're hearing noise, that's probably my children upstairs jumping around and my wife running after them trying to keep them quiet so I can do this podcast. So, anyways, there are some common questions. This was one. It's always, why are you leaving your job? Why are you looking for a new job? And make sure you have an answer prepared for that. That's a positive spin. Don't say, I hate my job, I hate my boss. I think that's like, I think everybody knows this. I'm not saying anything mind blowing here, but have it ready because they're going to ask that question. And if they don't, at least you had it ready for the next question, next person who asks you that question. Why are you looking at our company? What's the salary range you're looking at? Have you done this or that? Like, what I've seen, I mentioned it earlier, they take the job description, especially recruiters who are not very technical, and they go through, have you done this in the past? Have you written RFPs in the past? Have you done consulting in the past? And if the answer is yes, sure, you can always share a story. I like to share stories when the answer is not really, but I've done this that is similar. Like, I haven't had the need to do RFPs. I've always been able to bypass them. But if that's a requirement, I always talk about how my resume is kind of a response for proposal. Like, these were requirements. I just wrote my resume as a response to your requirements. That's a little trick that I enjoy saying. I also like to prepare questions that I'd like to ask the recruiter. And these could be the same questions used for everybody that you meet, but why are you looking to hire? When are they looking to hire? This is a discovery call in the end. Like, you're trying to figure out what's their budget and when they need this done. The more time they have, the longer it will stretch, the more opportunities that they may meet somebody else that fit the description better than you, for example. So you have to kind of push to close earlier. I like to ask, why did the last SE move? Like, why is there an opening in your company right now? Are they growing? Did someone leave? Well, what's happening there? And I like to ask how many account managers I would be working with, because the less account managers that I've worked with in one time, I felt better. At least I avoid one problem of where I'm going to allocate my time at a minimum. But it doesn't matter. It's just for your information, and it's always good to have a conversation. And what's the average sales cycle? Some of these questions the recruiter might not know, but he'll store it or she will store it in their memory and provide that information to the hiring manager. And at a minimum, you showed interest in the company, so you're not going to lose anything. And I'm talking about this if you're doing an interview with a recruiter who works for the company, not a third-party recruiter or a headhunter. Like, when you're talking to a recruiter, like, turn on your charisma, because like, I've had situations where I didn't have the necessary skills. There was one job where they wanted C++, and I haven't done C++ since university. And I really I shouldn't have passed the first round. But because the recruiter liked me, I was able to go to the second round, which then I was able to impress through my sales skills, my soft skills, and show them that I can learn new things to be technical, and move on to the next round and next round. So, and like, it's a good idea to turn on your charisma anyways, whoever you're talking to, when it comes to the interview process. You need everyone to like you. If they don't like you, it's going to be very tough for them to hire you. Not that they would want to hire you. So that's the screening call with a recruiter. So for a hiring manager, I like to do kind of the same things. I'm just a little bit deeper. I noticed that most of my interviews with hiring managers were not technical. And if they are, they're superficially technical. They're not looking for us to go in depth, and maybe they're looking to see how we react when we're asked something technical. For example, are we going to use the whiteboard at some point, or how we explain things. And while you're preparing for this, you can always ask the recruiter, what kind of questions I should expect in the next round, if there is going to be a next round. So that's part of the preparation for the next call. And who is the person you're going to talk to, and then go on LinkedIn and stalk them for a little bit. No one seems to mind that. Everyone seems to like it when people look at their LinkedIn profile. Ooh, it's exciting. Someone else is looking at me. So do that. I used to think that looking at LinkedIn and letting people know that I'm actually looking at their profile is a bad thing. Like I'm showing weakness or like I'm desperate. But no, it's research. Just go on there and do that. And when meeting with a hiring manager, I like to research the company in itself. Like I like to find out who the customers are and if I know any. Like if some of their customers already overlap with my customers. It doesn't have to be a competitive situation, but it can be a symbiotic relationship. Or I could have worked on something completely different with the same set of customers, and I can use that for my advantage when I name drop a couple of customer names to the hiring manager who most likely will not know them because they don't work with the customers directly, but at least they get you thinking about it. You get them thinking about it. You can find the customers fairly easily nowadays. Almost all companies want to advertise who they work with. So if you go on their front page or their main site, there's always success stories. A lot of companies have like a bunch of customers already on that main page, like as used by or as seen by. And then you can look at success stories. You can look at press releases, joint press releases with customers. You can find that information. It's not that hard. If you spend 5 minutes on the customer on your target employer's website, you can find that information fairly easily, and you can always use that as part of a conversation. You can download white papers. I always download white papers because although they're made by marketing and showing the product that is the most amazing product on earth, it also talks about the problems that they're solving for their customers, which gives you a little bit more insight about what you sell and what kind of questions you can ask. Look at some press releases or Google News about them to see if they've acquired any new companies. All this is just for conversational purposes, but they can also give you information if they're growing or if they laid off a bunch of people. It'll help you like set your head straight knowing where this company is going. Most companies right now have demo software that you can download. I know Splunk does, Dynatrace does, possibly Fortinet. Like I don't know who the company you're trying to go after is, but a lot of them have these demo licenses or like free versions that you can use on your personal laptop and just play around with it. Some companies like Splunk, for example, actually has like free certification online. Not for all of their courses, but at least the introductory course. You can take that and learn how something works. You can find if other companies have the same thing. If you are part of if you have O'Reilly, Safari Learning, or Plural site, you can figure out you can search for that information there if they have certifications, and you can learn the product. Now, it might be, you might think it's a waste of time to learn the product even though you don't have the job. But I'm not saying like you need to get in depth into it, like you need to answer every question. At a minimum, you need to be able to understand what it solves so that you can have this conversation. And what I like to do in these meetings is provide ideas to the hiring manager of where their product can fit in terms of solutions. Anticipate some of the questions that the hiring manager could ask. They could be the same questions that a recruiter asked. Actually, all the questions that I've had, I've talked about this before, but I had an interview with a company that was like 9 interviews, and I would say 50% of the questions were already asked by somebody else on the interview path. But you can always try to anticipate what questions they're going to ask. The hiring manager is interested in knowing how well you work with other people. Are you good technically? Will you be able to pick up new technologies fast? Are you going to be a burden, or are you going to be someone who is a positive, who's a net positive on the company? How's your relationship going to be with the account manager? Are you going to get into fights with them? Are you flexible or are you rigid? These are the types of things that they're interested in learning. So think about that when you're thinking about questions that hiring managers could ask. Prepare stories on working with customers, internal or external. So if you've never worked with external customers, if you're not in sales or in a consulting position, think about the people you've worked with internally as your customers and how you've helped them, how you've had to convince them to do something that they didn't want to do. Think of stories like that and prepare questions for the hiring manager. Some of the questions that I've asked in the past, in addition to like when are you looking to hire, and the question, what question did I ask the recruiter? What's the average sales cycle? How many account managers you'd be looking to, like an SE would work with? Why did the last SE move? Why are you looking to hire? When are you looking to hire? How often does your team hit your quota? Because they can offer you a 50-50 split, for example, saying, oh, your target ratio, you're going to be hitting 200K, but then you will not make over 20% of your quota. That's not a good thing, because on your resume you're going to have to say 20% of hit 20% of quota. That's does not look good no matter how you spin it. So try to figure that out. What does the quota look like? Is it quarterly, semi-yearly, yearly? How often do they increase it? How do they increase it? Is it by 5%, 10%, 100%? How does the team function? Like, is it a team or is it a bunch of people working separately? What would make a perfect SE? I've asked that question. I already said repeat the questions for the recruiter. How many people is he looking to interview, or is he interviewing currently? How many rounds of interviews are part of the interview process? When do you expect a response or decision? So these are all questions that I've asked in the past. For fellow SEs, because part of the process, you talk to a recruiter, you talk to the hiring manager, and then you talk to a bunch of SEs, 1, 2, 5, varies from company to company. They're usually interviewing you because their boss asked them to. They might not be upset about doing it, but the boss probably called them up, said, "Hey, I need you guys to interview this guy. Go." And sometimes they're given directions, sometimes they're given questions. I've actually had a situation where one of the engineers that interviewed me was asking me questions that was provided by the hiring manager because he forgot to ask them. So that was one way of doing it. And the focus is usually more technical, so get up to speed on the technical stuff. Play with the demo software or demo product that you downloaded, and prepare questions for that person. Like, what is it like working for the company? How do you like it? They'll always try to sell it, but you can always tell if there's some shenanigans happening in the background. For example, one of my interviews, the SE told me that the SE who was moving away from the position that I was applying to, so I was going to take her job, she basically said, yeah, we have this quota, which was doable, but then it took away some of our customers, gave it to somebody else, but we kept the same quota. I'm like, oh, well, that's a red flag, because why? So get that information. Try to get it as much as you can. How often do they hit their quota? How do they work with the manager? Or how does the manager work? Is he there? The manager that I've worked with the best always considered himself or considered us as his customers, not his workers. Like, his job was to keep us happy. Some other managers always thought that their job is to make sure we're doing our job, and I never worked well with that. Then part of the interview process, you might be talking to the VP of Sales Engineering. I've only done this once with the VP of Sales Engineering, and it was a weird one for me. He just wanted to know how I function, how I work, if I will work well with a team. Like, it was, you don't get there unless the manager likes you, and at that point, like, it's your job to win or not to screw up. So be courteous. I don't think there's much to prepare here. And then you have salespeople, directors, VP of sales. unless the salesperson is technical, these are conversations. These are them trying to figure out if they like you, if they will work well with you. That's the salesperson. Director of sales and VP, I've had like just, hey, do you want to make money? I'm like, yeah, all right, good. You're a capitalist. We want you. I've had these conversations, and I've had more in-depth conversations like, why are you looking to move? And nothing you haven't talked about before. At some point, the conversations all become redundant. So yeah, this is what I prepare for before doing interviews. Now, granted, I haven't prepared for one for over a year now, but from what I recall, like this has worked well for me. Like reading white papers was very important for me because then I was able to take that information that I learned and apply it when I did the interview. It actually worked so well for me that I got a call from. So I, generally speaking, I don't know if you guys know how these work, but I'm sure you do. It's inbound marketing. So you go in, you download a white paper, you have to provide your email. So I did that, and then I got a call from a salesperson trying to sell me on whatever I downloaded. And I told him I'm actually not I'm not in the market for buying. I'm interviewing for this position. Now this might not happen to everybody, but the salesperson actually took the time to get on a call with me and chat with me and give me tips and tricks. And then he provided good feedback to the hiring manager, telling him that I actually downloaded the white paper, and when he discussed it with me, I understood what's in it and all that. So it may help like doing all this may help in ways that you cannot see. Like people might think it's luck, but luck is what you make of it. Like I worked hard to get that lucky, I guess I could say that. Luck doesn't happen to those who don't work for it, in my opinion. So when you're preparing for an interview, especially if it's a job that you like, that job that you want, and you don't want to embarrass yourself, prepare for it. Work hard to try to get it. It will not hurt. It will only help in the long run, because you're meeting new people who are obviously influential in their company because they're salespeople, SE managers, SEs, VPs, whoever it is that you meet with. There are important people. There are good connections. Maybe you won't get the job now, or maybe you don't want the job now, but down the line you might want it. Like if it's a practice interview, I would still say do your best, because you never know. Maybe in the end you do like who you're talking to, and you might want to consider the job. So that's it from you guys. If you have any questions, so I've done a video about negotiating your salary, which I will link to it. We already talked about like having a salary range in mind. We've also talked about the interview process. I will put that in the show notes at wethesalesengineers.com/show79. That's it for me, guys. I'd love to know how you guys prepare for the interview. Actually, comment in this wherever you comment. If you're watching this on YouTube or if you're listening to this on the podcast, go to the show notes and leave a comment how you guys prepare for the interview, or if there's something you disagree with completely, leave a note there. I'd love to read it. I'd love to learn from you guys, and I will see you next time. With that, this is Ramsey signing off.